Okay, your final reader is going to be a long-time Singularity&Co reader, Keith R.A. I've never done your initials. R.A. DeCandido.
And you mispronounced my last name.
And I mispronounced your last name. DeCandido. DeCandido.
Just
Can't
call
you
him
tell I've
Brad.
introduced this guy at least 4 times? Isn't it obvious?
I'll get it right one day.
Keith is a fantastic writer, not only of wonderful blogs for Tor.com, but many, many, many tie-in novels. He's written Star Trek novels. His most recent one, which is a bestseller of some kind.
Not yet, but I'm aware of.
It's a bestseller now. The Klingon Art of War. He also has a forthcoming Sleepy Hollow novel. Please give a giant round of applause for Keith.
How many of you here are familiar with Alfred Bester's work? Oh, good. Okay. Those of you who aren't, Alfred Bester was very influential science. I was a fan there. Okay. Very influential science fiction writer, primarily in the 50s. He actually won the first ever Hugo Award for Best Novel for *The Demolished Man*, which was an incredibly influential novel about telepaths. J. Michael Straczynski based the Psi Corps in Babylon 5 after the setup in *The Demolished Man*, and named Walter Koenig's character after him. And from 1993 until 1998, I worked as a science fiction editor for Byron Price Visual Publications and Byron Price Multimedia Company. And one of the things Byron obtained while I was there was the rights to Bester's entire oeuvre. And one of the things, we published new editions of *The Demolished Man* and *Stars My Destination*. We put out, there was a novel he left unfinished when he died called *Psycho Shop*, which we then hired Roger Zelazny to finish, and then he died. And then we hired Janice Silverstein to edit it, and she almost didn't take the job because the last 2 people who touched the thing, didn't end well. So I'm happy to say 20 years later, Janice's still alive. So we broke it. And we also put together a short fiction collection called *Virtual Unrealities*. Robert Silverberg wrote the introduction and selected most of the stories that went into the book, but we also had access to his unpublished work and had the ability to put some of it in there. Most of it we didn't include because, well, it was unpublished for very good reason. There were 2 things we did include. One was something called *And 3.5 to Go*, which was a fragment. You can tell reading it, Bester didn't have the first clue how to end it. But it had so many cool ideas in it. We decided to run it with a big neon sign on it saying, "This is a fragment." And then there was another one which called *The Devil Without Glasses*, which he was in the middle of revising when he died. The first 13 pages were on much newer typewritten pages, and then pages 14 forward were on a much crummier, older photocopied set of pages. And he was obviously revising it. He changed the names of one of the main characters in the first 13 pages, which we then fixed in the latter. The problem was, the bottom of page 13 was not contiguous with the top of page 14. There was about a paragraph's worth of information missing. So I had to write bridging material. Here I am, 25-year-old editor, trying to ape Alfred Bester's style. I'm sweating bullets. I have no idea if I'm going to pull this off. I must have, because reading the story years later, I don't remember where the bit I wrote was. So if you can figure it out, let me know. Anyway, this is *The Devil Without Glasses*. I'm going to skip the opening bit because it's weird. Although it's important, but basically there's a guy, Granville, our main character, who is dreaming 2 guys named Coven and Star, who are saying weird things to him about obverse reality and reverse reality and stuff like that. And then a hand shaking his shoulder. A single bell clattering. A single voice repeating, "Granville! Granville! Wake up, will you, Charlie? That's emergency you're hearing." Granville stirred in the cot, trying to plunge back into sleeping and dreaming his own reality. He muttered, "Keep the goldfish quiet." The red-headed young man in t-shirt and white ducks exclaimed, "Jerusalem! I never saw a guy pound his ear like you. Charlie, that's emergency hollering. This is County Hospital. It's your turn to ride the wagon. Will you wake up?" Granville opened his eyes to a bleak, whitewashed dormitory room. "Okay, Gardner, the body is conscious. Try and look it. Kill that bell, will you? What time is it?" Gardner looked at him dubiously, then stepped to the wall switch and cut the bell circuit. 6 a.m. 6? Ugh, murder. No, auto accident. Corner of Broad and Grove. Come on, get dressed. The wagon's waiting. Get that epicene look off your face, Doctor." "That's bewilderdom, Doctor. I was having a demented dream when you woke me. I was hanging between 2 spaces, only I was in a fishbowl and the goldfish were fighting for me." put both shoes on, and I wrote a hit song that went, I forget. But anyway, there were rivals with nicknames who wanted me to join them in starry space they controlled. Starry? Why starry? There weren't any stars. Gardner waved his hand irritably. Will you get the lead out, Charlie? Some poor character just got smashed under a truck. Granville hunted for his kit with gummy eyes. Where's my bag? Right here. Why'd they call us instead of Memorial or St. Augustine? Was he one of our patients? No, but the cop who called it in said he asked for us and I checked. Name of Coven. No record with us. Granville stopped short. Coven? Why the take? Friend of yours? No, but I think it's somebody from my nightmare. You've got to be kidding. No way, but I swear I heard the goldfish arguing and wanting and warning and bad-mouthing a character named Coven, who very kindly got himself smashed by a truck to make your cockeyed dream come true. You probably heard me mention the name when I took the call. Gardner opened the dormitory door and shoved Granville through. Will you get going, Florence Nightingale? You can ask Mr. Coven why he walked out of your nightmare into a truck. The garage was bleak and silent. Granville's heels made sharp echoes above the rumbling ambulance motor. Eddie, the driver, glared as the intern sprinted in. Come on, Doc, come on. I've been waiting a whole 5 minutes. A guy could write the whole New Testament in 5 minutes. Sorry, Eddie, got held up. The ambulance roared and took off with a lurch. Eddie displayed his hacksaw profile and continued the conversation casually. Get yourself held up by what, could I ask? A dream. Ah, Doc, Scout's honor, Eddie. You've been sniffing ether again, Eddie tisk-tissed. Shame on you. Why don't you practice what you preach? The early morning traffic was beginning to litter the streets. Eddie started the ambulance siren and raised his voice to a conversational howl. I thought you MDs was writing books to stop people from dreaming. Psycho stuff. Ain't you kind of double-crossing your profession? Do you ever dream, Ed? Every night. Do you dream real? Do I? The broad's like, wow! So really you can't tell whether it happened or not? Who knows whether anything really happens, Doc? Eddie swung the heavy ambulance into Broad and thread-needled up the Grove intersection. Oh man, will you look at that red carpet? There was a skewed truck and a donut of people clustered around the front bumper staring at a scarlet puddle. A slender, pasty man with thinning hair was exhorting the public irritably. All right, folks, move along. This ain't a sideshow. Ain't you got something better to do this evening? Why get the creeps? Go buy breakfast or something. Granville shoved through the crowd, swinging his bag like a truncheon to clear the path. I'm Dr. Granville, County Hospital. Who's in charge here? The pasty man looked at him with bleary blue eyes. I am, Doc. The name's Simmons, Detective Division. Was passing when it happened and took over. Here's your patient. What's left of him. Granville knelt alongside the broken body. The face was pressed into the asphalt, strangely smiling. Black hair shot with gray. The features of a dissipated Caesar. The body terribly crushed. Granville shot a look at Simmons. Why in hell is he grinning? It's like his one joy in life was to get himself smashed by a truck. It'd take me 2 hours to list the damage done. Name is Coven, Sidney A. Address is in his wallet, 910 South Street. Coven, Granville wondered. But of course. Then aloud. Nothing I can do for Sidney A. He's an unadulterated DOA. Mashed like a pancake and loving it. Going to hold the driver? Simmons looked perplexed. I don't know. He tells a story you ought to hear. The detective called, Casey, over here! A lumbering man with a broad tonsure detached himself from the truck's front suspension and trudged up to them. His eyes showed panic. He croaked. It's like I said, Cap. All you gotta do is look at my record. I've been driving 347,000 miles and no accident. I never... Simmons snapped, save it. This ain't no grand jury. So help me, Cap. Sergeant. Sure, Sergeant. Tell the story to the doc. The driver's eyes swiveled to Granville, desperately avoiding the dead body in the crimson rug. Geez, Doc, I've been driving 347,000 miles and not just tell him what happened. Well, I'm coming down Broadsea. I got 500 gallons of grade A, 250 a crib, never mind the inventory. Yeah. Casey took a breath. So like I was saying, I'm doing about 40, and I see this guy walking down Broad on my side, the right-hand sidewalk, get it? Granville closed his bag and stood up. Coven? The dead guy. He's Coven. He's Coven, the doc said. Simmons interjected. Go ahead. So this Coven waves at me. I should pull over. He's an official-looking guy, so I figure it's a steep bench. I look over to the curb and slow down. I'm just going to give him an argument when boom! Boom? He takes a dive right under my front wheels. Granville stared at the driver uncertainly and then turned to Simmons. Is the story straight? The driver jerked back. So help me! There's witnesses, Simmons said. It's straight. Well, then it's suicide. I don't think so, the driver mumbled. I think he was off his rocker. Why? How? He yelled something crazy when he took the dive. Yelled what? About astronomy. Astronomy? He said the stars weren't going to get him. The stars? Yeah. Granville could not choke back the impulse to recite Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. He deliberately dropped his bag and then stooped to pick it up. He could feel himself blushing like a child. Simmons said, I ask you, Doc, is that a McGillis? Sounds crazy, or don't it? I don't know. Granville tried to grin. It sounds crazy, all right. Only it just occurred to me that maybe Coven isn't your lunatic. Maybe it's me. They parted on that note of confusion. At 2:30, he finally caught Gardner in the busy corridor outside maternity. The red-headed intern carried 6 Erlenmeyer flats with the deftness of a variety artist. He had had no lunch and was acerbic. Well, the dreamy kid in the flesh. How'd you do this morning, Doctor? Did the corpse interpret your nightmare, or did you get Eddie to read your palm? Granville gave him a dogged look with his spaniel eyes. Come into the stock room a minute, Gardner. I want to ask you something. Make it snappy. I got 2 dozen blood sugars waiting. The stockroom door swung shut. The room was silent and gloomy. In a corner, an autoclave muttered sinister secrets. Listen, Gardner. Granville hesitated and rubbed a hand up the back of his neck into his sealed brown hair. There was an interminable wait. Exasperated, Gardner said, You wanted to ask me something, so ask. Is this about home, career, ambition, fighting with my sister? No. Sure? Ginny's got a red-headed temper. I remember you 2 fighting over the engagement ring. Wow. It isn't anything like that. Will you just listen for a minute? Avidly when you're ready to talk. It's about the dream I had this morning. Oh, for the love of... I told you about me hanging between 2 spaces and the goldfish that were competing to enlist me in their rival teams. The honcho of one team was named Star. As in telescope? Be serious. Star and his little friends were worried about someone named Coven. Guy got smashed under the truck. Yes. So? Coven deliberately jumped under the truck. Suicide? Well, maybe, but dig this. Just as he took a dive, he yelled something about Star not getting him. Then he was smashed. End of story? It's got me rattled, Gardner. I was dreaming these 2 names when it happened. Maybe they were fighting over me. I could be the him Star wasn't supposed to get. What do you think? You really want to know? I'm asking. The marriage is off. Can't you ever be serious? But I am. Gardner rattled the Erlenmeyers alarmingly. You think I'd let my ever-loving sister marry a schizoid? You should lay there and bleed. I am already. Go back to school, Doc. Remember about dreams? They take a fraction of a second. A sleeping man can hear a door slam and dream an entire episode that culminates in that door slam. Alright, so maybe I heard you mention Coven's name on the phone, but what about Star? When the truck driver told me what Coven yelled, I knew I'd been dreaming about him. Granville shook his head dazedly. What right does a complete stranger have to intrude on me like that? Fatigue, brother, fatigue. The tired mind gets frazzled. You hear something for the first time and you can swear you're remembering it. But it's really only fatigue doing a con job on you. Now, it isn't as simple as that. You want it the other way? The dream way? Gardner put the flask down carefully and flipped up a cigarette. You want to believe these 2 characters are actually fighting to enlist you somewhere in the wild blue yonder? That's how I remember it. Gardner lit the cigarette and shoved it into Granville's mouth. So to win this contest, Coven walks out of your head into a truck. Great. Just the kind of level thinking the AMA is trying to foster. Well, what do you want me to think? That you've been on duty for 72 hours, which is enough to make anyone's minds play tricks. That Ginny is supposed to pick her ever-loving brother up in half an hour and take him driving. That you're going instead. 40 minutes later, Granville sat in the passenger seat of Ginny's car. It's about time I got you to myself, she said. You're like a Black Widow spider, Granville said comfortably. They eat their husbands. No, I'm not. I'm like a snapshot album, waiting for pictures to be pasted in. I don't care about your past. To hell with the past. But I've got the future all marked out. Picture of Chuck's first baby, picture of Chuck's 21st baby. Hey, lady, have a heart. Your baby's not mine. I'll be more restrained. Picture of Chuck needing research paper to cover to medical conventions. Am I bald? Not yet. You are when you receive the Humphrey Hickenlooper Memorial Award. For what? I don't know. I just know you're going to get some kind of award. That's the fun, darling. Knowing and waiting for it to come true. I think the nicest thing about falling in love is that you get to somebody else's dreams to wish for, too. Oh, dreams. Say, I'd almost forgotten. Listen, Ginny. Oh, which reminds me, Charles, I've been thinking. When you say Charles, it means you've been planning. I have. For the Snapshot album. We're going to be poor after we're married. All doctors are. It's traditional. Granville nodded complacently. You set up practice and starve, and everyone mocks you while you search for the cure for hangnails. Mad Granville, they mock. Thinks he can do the impossible. Cure hangnails. Ha ha ha. So I decided to get a job to help us, and I tried, and I did. Ginny looked apologetic. I got a job today. Hey, I bet you get that Hickenlooper Award for hangnails. Don't duck like that. What's all this about a job? It's wonderful, Ginny said with conviction. Afternoons only from 1 to 6. It pays $35. I do research. What kind of research? Well, statistical on floods, fires, wrecks, and so on. For what person or persons? An awfully nice man, very respectable, Chuck. A Mr. Coven. Mr. what? Coven. Ginny stared at him. What happened to your face, honey? It's all lopsided. Never mind my face. Granville took a breath and composed himself. What's Coven's full name? Sidney Albert Coven. Address? 910 South Street. Ginny looked interested and curious. Do you know anything about what time today did you get the job? This is a new game, Charles. Please, Ginny, just answer the question. I got the job this morning. What time? Around 11 o'clock. From Coven himself, personally. You spoke to him. Why, yes. She smiled perplexedly. But he isn't the one with the broken shoelaces, if that's what's worrying you. Drive back to town, Ginny. What is it, Chuck? What's the matter? He said slowly and seriously. Sidney Coven of 910 South Street was crushed to death under a truck 5 hours before you spoke to him. 910 South Street was a half block of two-story taxpayers. 3 of the stores were joined to a single entrance. Their windows were painted jet black halfway up. A tall man could peer over the black border and see 1,000 square feet of open floor cluttered with desks, files, and typists. It looked like an insurance office. Bold gold letters on the black windows read National Statistics. Ginny parked the car and said, I still think you're crazy. Don't try to argue, Granville answered. We haven't come to an issue yet. That's why we're here. Ginny shrugged. There isn't any issue. It says here, let's button it up before I go in and make a fool of myself. What did your Coven look like? Well, Ginny was being patient. A big man, large head, grizzled hair, kind of a dissipated face. Like a Roman. Could be. It could also be my Coven. Nonsense. It's a relative. You keep telling yourself, and it might too hard, Virginia. Granville looked at her keenly. You're lying about something, I can tell. What is it? Don't be silly, Charles. Yes, you are. Any other time you're a sucker for a mystery. Wild horses couldn't tear you away from the scent. Now you're trying to brush it off. Why? What's got you scared? I'm not, Charles. You are. He gripped her arm and looked at her intensely. I'm not fooling with this, Virginia. You've got to go along with me, understand? But it's so silly. Not to me. I like answers and I want one from you now. What are you holding out? What are you afraid to tell me? It isn't anything, but... As a matter of fact, my Coven was sick. He was lying on a couch in his office when I saw him, covered with a robe. I thought he was an invalid. He talks sickly. But it can't mean anything, Chuck. It's too ridiculous. Invalid. That's a hot one. Granville pushed open the door. All right, maybe I'm crazy. At least let me find out. You wait for me, Ginny. Either they'll throw me out or leave me out. He slammed the door at the roadster, walked across the sidewalk, and opened the back half-black glass door numbered 910. He stepped in and looked around uncertain. There was a crisp background of typewriters and telephones that was subtly reassuring. Close to the entrance, a switchboard girl was languidly plugging phone jacks. She spoke in a nasal whine. National, good afternoon. A pause. I'm sorry, Mr. Sunderland is in Belgium. Will there be any message? In the next pause, Granville began. Excuse me, I'd like to... Just a minute, please. The girl turned and called over her shoulder. Gertrude! Why, Mr. Sutherland, the death reports are not acceptable? Granville was startled. Gertrude, very dark and heavily stacked, nodded, finished typing a line, then leaned back interestingly to the desk behind her and made a note. The telephone girl gave Granville her attention. Can I be of assistance, sir? Well, Granville tried to be businesslike. I'm from County Hospital and I'm checking on an accident. Is this office run by a Sidney Coven? There is a Sidney Coven associated with National Statistics, sir. I see. Well, the fact is... Granville took the plunge. My name is Granville and I'd like to... The dark Gertrude shot up from her chair like a scalded cat. Oh, yes! Dr. Granville! She stepped forward brightly. This way, please. Mr. Coven is expecting you. Granville stared at her. Expecting you? Yes, Dr. Granville. Gertrude gave his arm the friendliest pressure. Right this way. Don't you know he died this morning? She smiled blankly. This way, please. Granville permitted himself to be led across the open floor, arguing feebly. There must be some mistake. Coven can't expect me. I never made an appointment. He dropped it and resorted his confusion. He can't expect anyone! Not my Sidney Albert. Who's yours, a son or a nephew or something? Through this aisle, Dr. Granville. Now, wait. Let's make sense. You don't expect me to... With relief, Gertrude interrupted. Here's Mr. Sharp, our office manager. A short, abrupt man with a woodpecker face jumped up from his desk and shot a hand toward Granville. Gertrude said, Mr. Sharp, this is Dr. Granville, the 4 o'clock appointment with Mr. Coven. Sharp clutched Granville's hand. Yes, of course. So glad to meet you, Doctor. Truly a pleasure. I've heard about you. One of the coming young physicians, eh? Mr. Sharp twinkled roguishly. No modesty now. This way, sir. Right this way. He pulled Granville toward a walnut door set flush in the rear wall. Let me thank you and congratulate you for your promptness, Doctor. The keeping of appointments seems to be a lost art today. People are shockingly careless. Just a minute, Mr. Sharp. The whole theory of efficient office management Mr. Sharp peeked brightly, is basic. Will you listen to me? I am not prompt. I do not have an appointment. I cannot see Sidney Coven. It's founded on promptness, accuracy, and a thorough respect for time. Sharp rapped once on the walnut door and thrust it open. He called, Dr. Granville is here, Mr. Coven, and stepped back. From the interior, a sick voice called, Good afternoon, Dr. Granville. Do come in. That will be all, Sharp. It was a crushed voice, a mutilated voice. Granville stiffened and slowly stepped into the office. Sharp closed the door smartly behind him. In a small square room with gray pickled walls, gray carpet, and wine-colored drapes blocking out the windows, were two pools of light. One shone on a small desk behind which sat a sallow man with brutal features, his eyes concealed by black glasses. The other floated an empire couch in the corner. Sidney Coven lay on the couch. His body was straight and rigid, concealed by a gray corduroy coverlet. He lay quite motionless, his heavy head rolled a little to one side so that his jet eyes could command the room. He looked like a corpse, imperfectly aged. His saturnine face was misshapen and bruised, as though he'd been kicked. With a frightening, mutilated voice, Coven said, Thank you for keeping your appointment. Please do not be alarmed at my crushed condition, but I forgot. As a physician, you wouldn't be. This gentleman is Mr. Arno. You're dead, Coven! Granville advanced a step. He repeated, You're dead! Quite so. Quite so. You were DOA this morning. Your back is broken, your arms are smashed, ribs shattered. Your heart is burst open. You're dead, Coven! Oh, to be sure, Dr. Granville. Now, and the pieces of you lay there on that couch and look at me and talk to me. For God's sake, will you be quiet, Granville? The agonizing voice stunned Granville again. Coven continued quietly. Mr. Arno is an extremely busy person. We can't take up too much of his time. Please, sit in that chair alongside the desk. For your own sake, you'd best sit before you collapse. Granville sank into the chair, not glancing at Arno. He continued to stare at Coven. All right, Arno, Coven murmured painfully. Examine him. This is the man I told you about. Ah, said Arno, his voice as icy and disinterested as a phonograph. The Granville. Yes. My name, Granville muttered desperately, is Charles Granville. I'm an intern at County Hospital. 25 years old, engaged to be married, in sound health. I do not hear voices, see visions, or experience... The jet eyes caught him and held him and cut off his words. This young man is extremely dangerous, Arno, Coven said. He has forced me to take unusual and costly measures. Listen carefully, Granville. I'm going to praise you to Mr. Arno. You should be flattered. I've got nothing to listen to. Nothing. Coven chuckled and went on. The average man lives his little life and dies his little death. He has the odd sensation every now and then that the life he is living is make-believe, sham, that there could be more to it than appears. Indeed he does, said Arno, moving quietly behind Granville. He has been taught to shrug his shoulders and believe that the odd clues he picks up are dreams, visions, hallucinations, but not Dr. Granville. The crushed voice sounded amused and bitter. This young man will not be duped. He is a poetic scientist. Social pressure, moral pressure, terror, threats. None of these influences can lobby against the growing certainty in his mind. He is beginning to listen, to Star. In a short time, he will hear him. Presently, he will understand. Star? Granville started to his feet. That name! Then I was right. Then I did. Arno's hand on his shoulder drew him back into the chair. He attempted to turn around, but Coven said quickly, Don't, Dr. Granville. Arno is not wearing his glasses. It would be most unpleasant. Arno said, You're an inconsiderate young man, Doctor. You've made a lot of trouble for Mr. Coven. I blocked Star this morning, Coven went on, at the cost of hurling myself under a truck. It was the only way to guarantee Granville's instant awakening. Star was on the verge of final contact with our friend. He may get through at any moment. We can't let that happen, can we, Doctor? Arno inquired in impersonally pleasant tones. Listen, Granville said, none of this makes sense. Any of it. Outside this place looks like an office, just an ordinary business office. Well, naturally, Coven replied. He laughed without laughter, his mouth and throat making the sounds and motions. It was the laughter of a parrot. Naturally. But inside it isn't ordinary anymore. Crazy talk and crazy people, appointments I never made. I made it, Doctor, said Coven. He laughed the parrot laugh again. I made it for you this morning. With Miss Gardner's assistance. Arno laughed. It was the duplicate of Coven's mechanical imitation. You're dead, and you're a liar, Granville cried. The hand on his shoulder restrained him. Granville did not dare turn around. To Arno, Coven said, Finished? All finished. Will it be difficult? Interesting, but not difficult. Arno sauntered around the chair and stood before Granville, staring down at him through the opaque black glasses he had put on again. Listen, please. Listen to me, Dr. Granville, Coven interrupted. I have 2 statements to make. The first is a proposal. Will you join us? Volunteer? Will you become one of us? Join who? Join what? I could answer that in many ways, Doctor. Let us say, Coven chose his words carefully. Let us say that this is an asylum, and we are the keepers. A stranger outside the gates wants to teach the inmates how to escape. And you want me to be a keeper. Just one way of putting it, Doctor. Coven selected other words. Let us say there is a treasure, and we are guarding it. Someone wants to teach the world the combination of the strong room lock. And you want me to be the guard. Oh, again, just another way of putting it. Have you heard of the balance of nature? Of course you have. This is more to nature than this earth. Far more. At present, it is in delicate balance. Mr. Starr would like to upset that balance by awakening you and your friends. We want you to go on sleeping. Sleeping. Sleeping, repeated Arno. Let us say that. But you are on the verge of waking, Doctor, Coven said. And we should like you to arise from the right side of the bed, so to speak. You could be a genuine asset. We would like to have you with us rather than Starr. Will you join? There was a pause. Granville glanced up at Arno, who stood over him, icy and intent, the black glasses reflecting twisted light, then looked at Coven's dead body and living eyes. I don't know anything, he said slowly. I don't understand anything. Anything. But I know I don't like you, I don't believe you, and I don't trust you. He finished with a rush. I don't want to be a keeper, I don't want to be a guard. No, I will not. I will not join you, wherever you are. Let us say that. Oh, a pity. The mangled voice died away, then resumed. In that case, I make my second statement. Your potential must be destroyed. You will be neutralized. You mean killed. Well, just one way of putting it, Doctor. Let us say, if you will not volunteer, you will be drafted. You mean killed. Just another way of putting it, Doctor. When, Arno? Sometime this evening. I'll arrange everything. Very good. The Jedi eyes caught Granville. Thank you again for keeping this appointment, Doctor. You may go now. Granville got to his feet. If it's murder, why wait? Why not? Don't say anything, Doctor. Just go. Suavely, Arno led Granville to the door and opened it for him. From the couch, Coven said, You understand we have another appointment for later today? You understand that you always keep the appointments we make for you? Backing through the door, Granville stammered, You're dead, Coven. I don't believe anything. The dead man laughed his imitation laugh and called, Au revoir, Doctor. The door closed. Granville turned and weaved through aisles toward the street. He was dizzy and choked. Through pounding, rumbling ears, he heard Sharp, then Gertrude, then the telephone girl calling bright farewells. Red evening sunlight blinded him in the street. He lurched toward the car, saw Ginny in triplicate open the door for him, and then stare, her mouth making soundless motions. There was a roaring and a stunning blow on his temple. And then night. If you want to know how the rest of the story goes, pick up the book. Have some of them, and I've got some of my small press books in a bag over there.
Another round of applause for Keith. Keith, is there something in that story about somebody being stabbed?
Yes.
I'm just making sure it's not refers to
A woman.
Like sandwiches.
Female breasts,
or,
yes.
I thought it was sandwiches.
In case it wasn't obvious, Bester wrote in the 50s and 60s.
It's hard to forget.